The collision. The ghost in the mirror. Dr. Maya Chen stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of Seattle Grace Hospital, her reflection staring back at her like a ghost from another life. 10 years ago, she had been Mei Lin, daughter of immigrants who poured their hearts into a small family restaurant in Chinatown. 10 years ago, she had watched everything burn to ashes, not from fire, but from something far more destructive: corporate greed. Her hands, steady enough to operate on the most delicate brain tissue, trembled slightly as she touched the glass. Behind her, the surgical ward hummed with its usual rhythm, nurses moving efficiently, patients recovering, lives being saved. She had built this reputation brick by brick, degree by degree, surgery by surgery. Dr. Maya Chen was untouchable, brilliant, respected. But Mei Lin? Mei Lin was still that 17-year-old girl holding her dying brother in a hospital waiting room, begging someone, anyone, to help him while insurance paperwork shuffled and precious minutes slipped away like sand through desperate fingers. Dr. Chen? A nurse's voice pulled her back. The gala starts in an hour. Don't you need to get ready? Maya turned, her professional mask sliding perfectly into place. Thank you, Jennifer. I'll head down shortly. The hospital's annual charity gala. Normally, Maya avoided these events like a surgical complication. She had no patience for small talk, champagne, and the performative generosity of the wealthy. But tonight was different. Tonight, he would be there. Damien Cross. The name alone made her pulse quicken with something between rage and anticipation. CEO of Cross Industries, one of the youngest billionaires in the country, philanthropist, and the man whose family had destroyed hers. The preparation. In the surgeon's lounge, Maya changed from her scrubs into a midnight blue gown that hugged her figure like water. She had chosen it carefully, strategically. Everything about tonight was strategic. Her hair, usually pulled back in a functional bun, fell in dark waves past her shoulders. Makeup transformed her face from clinical to captivating. She barely recognized herself. Good. That was the point. Maya applied red lipstick with surgical precision, her mind drifting back to that terrible day 10 years ago. Cross Development Corporation had wanted the entire block where her family's restaurant stood. When her parents refused to sell, mysterious health code violations appeared. Then fires in neighboring buildings. Then sudden, crippling tax audits. One by one, the other businesses folded, sold, disappeared. Her father had held out the longest, proud and stubborn, believing in justice, in the American dream he'd immigrated for. But the pressure was relentless, suffocating. The stress triggered his heart attack. The medical bills piled up. And then, when they finally had no choice but to sell, the offer was a fraction of what the property was worth. Her younger brother, David, had tried to fight back. At 15, he'd gathered evidence, contacted lawyers, attempted to expose the corruption. But Cross Industries had resources beyond anything a struggling immigrant family could comprehend. David's accident came 2 weeks before his scheduled testimony. A hit and run that left him with internal bleeding and a traumatic brain injury. They'd rushed him to the hospital, but their insurance had lapsed during the financial crisis. The emergency room made them wait. Fill out forms. Prove they could pay. By the time a doctor finally saw him, it was too late. Maya had held his hand as he died, promising him through tears that she would make them pay. Every single one of them. That promise had shaped the last decade of her life. Medical school. Residency. Fellowship in neurosurgery. She'd become everything David would never have the chance to be. And now, finally, she was ready. The encounter. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the practiced laughter of Seattle's elite. Maya descended the stairs, aware of the eyes that turned toward her. She'd learned to use attention as a tool, to move through rooms like a surgeon through delicate tissue, precise and purposeful. She spotted him immediately. Damien Cross stood near the bar, surrounded by a small crowd of admirers and business associates. He was taller than she'd expected from photographs, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead and sharp features that would have been severe if not for the warmth in his eyes when he smiled. Maya felt her breath catch, and hated herself for it. He was not supposed to be handsome. He was not supposed to have kind eyes. He was supposed to be a monster, cold and cruel like the corporation that bore his name. But as she watched him excuse himself from his group to crouch down and speak gently to a small child tugging at his sleeve, something in her carefully constructed narrative wavered. Dr. Chen. The hospital administrator, Dr. Patricia Hughes, appeared at her elbow, champagne glass in hand. I'm so glad you came. There's someone I'd love you to meet. Maya's heart began to race as Patricia guided her directly toward Damien Cross. Mr. Cross, this is Dr. Maya Chen, our chief of neurosurgery. She's the one I was telling you about, the surgeon who successfully separated those conjoined twins last year. Damien turned, and his eyes met Maya's. Time seemed to slow. She watched recognition flicker across his face, not of who she was, but of something deeper, something that made his expression shift from polite interest to genuine attention. Dr. Chen, he said, extending his hand. His voice was deeper than she'd imagined, warm like expensive whiskey. It's an honor. I read about that surgery. Remarkable work. Maya took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, the firm confidence of his grip. Mr. Cross. Your donation to the pediatric wing was generous. Something flickered in his eyes at her tone, the slight edge she hadn't quite managed to hide. His mouth curved into a half-smile. I sense a but coming. No but, Maya said smoothly, withdrawing her hand even though part of her wanted to hold on. Just observation. Money is easy for people like you. Time, presence, actual care, that's harder. Patricia made a small, shocked sound beside her, but Damien's smile only widened. You're absolutely right, he said, surprising her. Which is why I'm here tonight, trying to learn how to do better. Would you help me with that, Dr. Chen? Would you tell me what this hospital really needs? The dance. Somehow, they'd moved away from the crowd. Somehow, champagne had appeared in her hands. Somehow, Maya found herself on the balcony overlooking the city, the sounds of the gala muted behind glass doors, alone with the man she'd spent 10 years planning to destroy. You don't remember me, Maya said quietly, the words escaping before she could stop them. Damien turned to her, moonlight catching the angles of his face. Should I? No, she said quickly. I just meant, you meet so many people. It must all blur together. He studied her with an intensity that made her skin warm. You're not someone who blurs, Dr. Chen. I can tell that much. You don't know anything about me. Then tell me, he said simply. Tell me who you are. The question hung between them, loaded with meanings he couldn't possibly understand. Who was she? Mei Lin, the girl who lost everything? Maya Chen, the surgeon who saved lives? Or something darker, something driven by vengeance and pain? I'm someone who believes in justice, she finally said. In consequences for actions. In making sure the powerful don't destroy the powerless without paying a price. Damien's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across his features. That's a heavy burden to carry. Someone has to carry it. And what if, he said softly, stepping closer, what if the person you think is powerful is actually just as lost as everyone else? What if they're trying to make amends for sins that aren't even entirely their own? Maya's breath caught. There was pain in his voice, real and raw. This wasn't the script she'd prepared for. He wasn't supposed to be complicated, human, wounded. Then they should try harder, she whispered, but the words lacked conviction. Damien reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her chest ache. I'd like to see you again, he said. Outside of hospitals and galas. Just, as people. Would that be possible, Dr. Chen? Every rational part of Maya's mind screamed at her to say no, to walk away, to stick to her plan. But the plan hadn't accounted for this, for the way her heart raced when he looked at her, for the genuine kindness in his eyes, for the possibility that everything she thought she knew might be incomplete. Maya, she heard herself say. Call me Maya. His smile was like sunrise, warm and full of promise. Maya. I'm Damien. And I promise you, I'm going to be worth knowing. The decision. Later that night, back in her apartment, Maya stood before her wall of research. Photos of Damien, articles about Cross Industries, documents detailing the destruction of her family's life. 10 years of careful planning, of becoming someone powerful enough to hurt him the way he'd hurt her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for tonight. You reminded me why the work matters. Damien. Maya stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the delete button. This was her chance to back out, to preserve her mission, to protect herself from the dangerous complication of seeing him as human. Instead, she typed back, dinner tomorrow? I know a place in Chinatown. If you really want to understand what this city needs. The response came. Within seconds, I'll be there. Thank you for the chance. Maya set down her phone and looked again at her wall of revenge. Somewhere in her mind, David's voice whispered a reminder of the promise she'd made. But another voice, quieter and more dangerous, suggested that maybe, just maybe, there was more to this story than she knew. She would go to dinner with Damien Cross. She would get close to him, learn his secrets, find the vulnerabilities in his empire. And when the time came, she would strike. But as she lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, it wasn't revenge that kept her awake. It was the memory of his hand tucking hair behind her ear, the genuine pain in his eyes, the terrible, wonderful possibility that she was walking into something far more dangerous than she'd ever planned. She was walking into feelings she couldn't control. And for a surgeon who'd spent a decade mastering precision and control, that was the most terrifying risk of all. Part 2, The Seduction. The restaurant. Maya chose the location deliberately. Golden Dragon, 3 blocks from where her family's restaurant once stood. The building that had housed Chen's kitchen was now a luxury condo development, each apartment worth more than her parents had earned in their entire lives. She arrived early, sitting at a corner table with a perfect view of the street. The familiar smells of garlic, ginger, and soy sauce transported her back to childhood, her mother's hands expertly folding dumplings, her father's laugh echoing from the kitchen, David sneaking spring rolls when he thought no one was looking. Maya? She looked up to find Damien standing beside the table, and her breath caught. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater, his hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. He looked younger like this, less like a billionaire CEO and more like someone she might have actually chosen to have dinner with. You came, she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Did you think I wouldn't? He sat down, his eyes scanning the restaurant with genuine interest, not the disdain she'd expected from someone of his wealth. I wasn't sure Chinatown was your usual scene. Something flickered across his face. It used to be. A long time ago. Before Maya could respond, Mrs. Wang, the restaurant owner, appeared with tea. Her eyes widened when she saw Maya. Mei Lin? Is that you? Maya's heart stopped. She'd changed her name legally, built an entire new identity, and in one moment, it threatened to crumble. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wang continued in Mandarin, you look so much like a girl who used to come here with her family. The Chen family. Such a tragedy. What happened to them? I get that a lot, Maya managed, also in Mandarin, her voice steady despite the panic. Common face. Mrs. Wang nodded, but her eyes lingered with doubt before she bustled away to get their order. Damien was watching her carefully. You speak Mandarin. My grandmother, Maya lied smoothly. She insisted I learn. It's beautiful. The language, I mean. He poured tea for both of them, a small gesture that surprised her. What did she say about the Chen family? Maya's hand trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. Just that something bad happened to them. She didn't elaborate. This neighborhood has changed a lot, Damien said quietly, looking out the window. A lot of families were displaced by development. It's one of the things I've been trying to understand better. The cost of progress. Is that why you agreed to come here? He met her eyes. I came here because you asked me to. But yes, I want to understand. My father. He paused, something dark crossing his features. My father built an empire on development. I inherited that empire. And I'm starting to realize I also inherited a lot of consequences I didn't create but that I'm responsible for. The sincerity in his voice unsettled Maya. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be arrogant. Dismissive, easy to hate. Why do you care? She asked, genuine curiosity slipping past her guard. You have everything. Why does it matter what happened to some immigrant families a decade ago? Damien was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something I don't usually share? Maya nodded, leaning forward despite herself. I was 16 when my mother died, he began, his voice soft. She was the only thing keeping my father's worst impulses in check. After she was gone, he became ruthless. The company became everything. And I. He exhaled slowly. I tried to be what he wanted. I went to business school, learned the company inside and out, told myself the end justified the means. What changed? I found her journals, he said. My mother's. She'd documented everything. Every shady deal, every family displaced, every corner cut. She'd been trying to gather evidence, planning to expose him, to make it right. And then she got sick. Maya's chest tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying my father's empire was built on a lot of pain. And when I took over 3 years ago, I started finding the bodies, so to speak. Not literal bodies, but destroyed lives, ruined families, suicides, addictions that developed when people lost everything. His hands clenched around his teacup. I've been trying to make amends, quietly. But it's not enough. It's never enough. The revelation. The food arrived, steaming plates of dumplings, noodles, and vegetables. They ate in contemplative silence for a while, but Maya's mind was racing. 3 years ago. Damien had taken over Cross Industries 3 years ago. 7 years after her family's destruction. He would have been in college when it happened, nowhere near the decisions being made. Your father, Maya said carefully, where is he now? Retired. Living in the Bahamas, spending his blood money on boats and golf. Bitterness edged Damien's words. We don't speak. Haven't in 2 years. Because of what you found in your mouth. Ours journals? Because I confronted him. Asked him about specific families, specific projects. He didn't deny anything. Just said that's how business works, that sentiment is for the weak. Damien's jaw tightened. I told him I was going to make it right. He told me I'd destroy everything he built. I said good. Maya sat back, her carefully constructed worldview tilting dangerously. So what have you been doing? Finding the families. Quietly. Anonymously when possible. Setting up trust funds, paying off medical debts, funding educations. Trying to return what was stolen, even though money can't actually fix what was broken. Why anonymously? He looked at her with surprising vulnerability. Because I didn't want gratitude. I didn't deserve it. And because. He hesitated. Because I was afraid that if I put a face to the amends, people would see my father's face. His blood runs through my veins, Maya. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm terrified I'll become him. The raw honesty in his words cut through Maya's defenses like a scalpel. She'd spent 10 years building a monument to her hatred, and in 2 conversations, this man was threatening to topple it. What about the Chen family? The question escaped before she could stop it. Did you find them? Damien's expression grew somber. I tried. The parents moved back to China, from what I could trace. The daughter disappeared into the system. I set up a trust fund in case she ever surfaces, but... He shook his head. She had a younger brother who died. 17. That one keeps me up at night. 15, Maya whispered. He was 15. Damien's eyes snapped to hers. What? Her heart pounded. She'd gone too far, revealed too much. But suddenly, sitting across from this man who carried guilt for sins he didn't commit, who spent his fortune trying to heal wounds he didn't inflict, she was tired of hiding. David Chen was 15 when he died, Maya said quietly. I remember reading about it. Hit and run, then died in the hospital because they couldn't afford treatment. You researched the family? I research a lot of things about development and displacement. It's important to me. Understanding the human cost. It wasn't quite a lie, but it wasn't quite the truth either. Damien studied her face, and Maya wondered if he could see through her, if somehow he knew that she was Mei Lin, that she'd sat in this neighborhood 10 years ago planning his destruction. It should be important to everyone, Damien said finally. The human cost. We get so focused on progress, on growth, on success that we forget actual people pay the price. The seduction. Over the next 6 weeks, Maya saw Damien 3 or 4 times a week. Dinners turned into late-night conversations. Conversations turned into walks through the city. Walks turned into stolen moments in his penthouse or her apartment, wrapped in sheets and whispered confessions. She told herself it was all part of the plan. Getting close to him, earning his trust, finding access to cross-industries files. And it was working. She'd gained his passwords, his trust, his complete vulnerability. But somewhere along the way, the plan had started to crack. It cracked when Damien stayed up all night with her after a particularly difficult surgery, just holding her while she processed the loss of a patient. It cracked when he introduced her to Sophia, a college student he was mentoring, whose family had been displaced by cross-development, and Maya watched him help her with calculus homework with genuine patience and care. It cracked when he made love to her not with the casual entitlement of the wealthy, but with a tenderness that made her feel seen, valued, cherished. I'm falling for you, Damien whispered one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. I know it's fast. I know it might be crazy. But Maya, you make me want to be better. You make me believe I can be more than my father's legacy. Maya's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't afford. Damien. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. You're the first person I've been with who sees me. Not my money, not my name, just me. But that was the cruelest lie. She didn't see him. She saw a target, a mission, a decade-old promise to a dying brother. Except now, she also saw the man who'd cried in her arms over a news article about a homeless veteran. The man who'd donated anonymously to her hospital's charity fund. The man who was trying, genuinely trying, to be good despite the poison in his bloodline. The discovery. Maya's moment of truth came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Damien had given her the code to his home office, trusting her completely. While he was in a meeting, she finally had unfettered access to his files. She found it all. Documents detailing cross-developments projects, including the Chinatown development from 10 years ago. Her hands shook as she read through the files, preparing to see confirmation of everything she'd believed. But what she found instead made her blood run cold. There were notes in the margins, in handwriting she recognized as Damien's. Research into every family affected. Compensation amounts calculated. Contact information traced. And paper clipped to the file about her family was a photograph. It was her. Mei Lin at 17, pulled from a newspaper article about David's death. Damien had circled her face and written in the margin, "Find her. Make it right." Her hands trembled as she flipped through more files. Project after project, her father had destroyed lives. And project after project, Damien had tried to rebuild them. The Chin family file was thick. She saw records of money transferred to accounts set up for any surviving family members. Saw a private investigator's report tracing her parents to Guangzhou. Saw a note, daughter, possibly deceased or changed identity. Continue searching. And then, paper clipped to the back, a more recent document. A photograph of her, Dr. Maya Chen, at a medical conference. And beneath it, in Damien's handwriting, same eyes. Same determination. Maya Chen equals Mei Lin Chen? Below that, a single word, underlined 3 times, protect. Maya's vision blurred with tears. He knew. He'd known, possibly from that first night at the gala, certainly by their second meeting. He'd known who she was, what his father had done to her, and instead of running, instead of trying to silence her or buy her off, he'd simply written, protect. The office door opened. Maya spun around, the file clutched in her hands. Damien stood in the doorway, rain-soaked from his walk back from the meeting. His eyes went to the file, to her tears, to the naked emotion on her face. How long? Maya whispered. How long have you known? He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. I suspected at the gala. The way you looked at me, it wasn't attraction. It was recognition. And anger. So much anger. He moved closer slowly, carefully. I confirmed it 2 days later. Your name change was buried, but not deeply enough. Why didn't you say anything? Because I deserved your anger, Damien said simply. I deserved whatever you were planning. And I thought, maybe, if I gave you the access you were looking for, you'd see that I was trying to make it right. You used me, Maya said, but there was no conviction in the words. No, he said firmly. I fell in love with you. The investigation was just due diligence. The falling, that was all real. Your father killed my brother. I know. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right, even though I can't. Even though nothing I do will bring him back. Maya looked down at the file in her hands, at the photograph of her younger self, at the word protect written in Damien's decisive handwriting. I came to destroy you, she whispered. I spent 10 years planning your destruction. I know, Damien said softly. And you could. You have everything you need in those files. One call to the right journalist, and Cross Industries would implode. My father would finally face consequences. I would lose everything. He stood before her, completely vulnerable, offering no defense. So why don't you? He asked quietly. Why haven't you made that call? Maya looked up at him, this man who carried guilt that wasn't entirely his, who'd spent his fortune trying to heal wounds he didn't inflict, who'd known who she was and loved her anyway. Because, she said, her voice breaking, because David wouldn't want me to destroy someone who's trying to do good. And because. The words stuck in her throat, terrifying and true. Because I fell in love with you too. And I hate myself for it. Damien crossed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. Maya collapsed against his chest, 10 years of grief and anger and confusion finally breaking through. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry for what my father did. I'm sorry I couldn't stop it. I'm sorry David died. I'm sorry your family was destroyed. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Maya cried for everything she'd lost, for the girl she'd been, for the brother who'd never grown up, for the parents who'd been broken by greed, for the 10 years she'd spent nurturing hatred instead of healing. And then, finally, she cried for what she was about to lose, the simplicity of revenge, the clarity of anger, the identity she'd built around being someone's destruction. What do we do now? She whispered. Damien pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. We make a choice. You can still destroy me. I won't fight it. Or we destroy my father together. We take all of this evidence, everything you found, everything I've gathered, and we make sure he finally pays for what he did. Not me. Him. The person actually responsible. Maya searched his eyes. Why would you do that? He's your father. He stopped being my father when he chose money over humanity. And you. He brushed tears from her cheeks. You deserve justice, Maya. Real justice. Not the hollow victory of destroying someone who's trying to make amends, but actual consequences for the person who committed the crimes. It was the answer she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Justice without more destruction. Accountability without losing what she'd unexpectedly found. He'll come after us, Maya said. Your father won't go quietly. Damien's expression hardened. Let him try. I have resources too. And this time I'm not fighting alone. Maya looked at the file in her hands one more time, at the evidence of crimes and attempted restitution, at the photograph of the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. Then she looked at Damien, at this complicated, guilt-ridden, genuinely good man who'd somehow become the most important person in her world. Okay, she whispered. Let's bring him down. Together. Part 3, The Reckoning. The plan. They worked through the night, spreading documents across Damien's dining table like surgical instruments before an operation. Maya's medical training served her well. She approached the evidence with the same meticulous care she applied to neurosurgery, organizing crimes by severity, connecting patterns, building an irrefutable case. This alone could put him away for years, Maya said, holding up a file detailing systematic fraud. Falsifying inspection reports, bribing city officials, threatening witnesses. Damien sat across from her, his laptop open, comparing her findings against his mother's journals. Mom documented the same official, City Councilman Roger Burke. He's been on my father's payroll for 15 years. Is he still active? Very. He's up for re-election next year. Damien's fingers flew across the keyboard. And according to these bank records, he just received another payment last month. My father might be retired, but he's still pulling strings. Maya felt ice creep down her spine. For what project? Damien's face darkened as he read the screen. The new waterfront development. They're displacing another 300 families, mostly immigrants and low-income residents. He looked up at her, anger and disgust mingling in his expression. He's doing it again. Even in retirement, he can't stop destroying people. Then we stop him, Maya said firmly. We gather everything we have and we go to the FBI, the press, whoever will listen. It's not that simple. Damien stood, pacing to the window. Dawn was breaking over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. My father has contingencies. Lawyers, connections, enough money to tie any prosecution up in court for decades. We need something bigger. Something he can't buy his way out of. Maya joined him at the window, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we don't just expose him. We dismantle his entire network. Burke, the other officials, the shell companies, all of it. We build a case so airtight that even his lawyers can't find a crack. That could take months. I know. Damien turned to face her. Which means he might discover what we're doing. And when he does, he'll come after both of us. Are you sure you want to do this, Maya? You could walk away right now. Take the evidence about your family, sue the company, and let me handle my father alone. Maya thought about David, about the promise she'd made to him 10 years ago. She'd vowed to make them pay, to seek justice for his death. But she'd been so focused on Damien as the target that she'd missed the real villain. I'm not walking away, she said. David deserves justice. Every family your father destroyed deserves justice. And I'm not letting you face him alone. Damien pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Maya said with a slight smile. But you're stuck with me anyway.